Hello everyone, I'm Rebecca Keppel. In today's video, I am sharing the brand new Simon Hurley release for Ranger. Ranger and Simon Hurley sent me the whole release, including 5 new colors of Simon Hurley inks. These are my first time trying them and I absolutely love them. New stamps and stencils. In this video, I'll also be sharing ways to stretch those supplies. So if you only have 5 colors of a range of inks, ways to use them to create new hues and new shades of those colors. I'm also going to share different ways to use these inks, including ink blending, inking over stencils, and watercoloring. So let's jump right in and take a look at these 5 amazing bright colors of inks. First, let's take a close look at the brand new ink pads that Simon Hurley added to his collection. There's a red Love Struck, an orange Roar, yellow Shooting Star, green Viper, and blue No Diving. And I'm gonna stamp them all out, swatches of them, so that you can see the entire rainbow together and how bright and fun they are. Now, I'm gonna have a couple of tips and tricks to use them in different ways, including on stencils and on watercoloring, but I'm also going to show how to mix and match these colors a little bit to get some different hues from them. But here's the whole rainbow stamped out, and I absolutely love these bright colors, especially that red and blue. Those are hard colors to achieve, and I really love how they turned out here. Now I'm going to use these new inks with the new stencils and stamp sets to create some slimline and A2 cards. So the first thing I'm going to use is the Mosaic Flowers stencil, and this is a layering stencil with 2 different stencils. It's also a slimline size, and you can see they number the stencils for you so you can see which ones to use first. I'm going to use that first one with the flowers, and I'm going to use it on a slimline card base. I'm using Nina Solar White cardstock, and I'm using a little bit of purple tape to hold it in place on the spot of the stencil where there isn't anything to color in. I'm using the Tim Holtz domed foam blenders, and you can see how beautifully they pick up this ink. So now I'm used to ink blending with like a distress oxide or something else. These blend really beautifully too. So don't be afraid to try out different inks. If you've never tried them before, you don't have to buy the whole collection at once. Just buy the colors that you love. And this blue is absolutely a #1 favorite for me. I love this color so much. So I'm going to blend each of these mosaic flowers with that No Diving blue, and it's super simple. You can see how quickly I get that color down. I like to leave it in different gradations of color, so some are a little bit darker, just depending on how I press down. You can see how easy it is to line up the second stencil there. It just goes right around the flower, and then I put that purple tape on spots of the stencil and wrapped behind the cardstock so that it holds it in place. And this time I'm using Shooting Star. It's on kind of these little dots that surround the stencil of the mosaic flowers. This one includes kind of a mask on top of the flowers so that you're just putting the dots around it. I love stencils like this that are designed to give you different colors on your card very easily. So you don't have to do a lot of coloring or intense, Copic coloring or anything like that. You're just doing some really basic ink blending. I decided to add one more color to this on the dots there on just the outsides, the edges. I'm going to go in with a little bit of the Roar. It's a really pretty orange. These colors are bright and fun, and I really am happy to add them to my collection of ink colors that I can use. So again, kind of going over a little bit of the yellow with that orange creates another color. So even if you only have, say, 5 colors from a new collection, it's enough to get you lots of different looks on your cards. I'm gonna trim this one down so that everything is flush. The design is flush on all sides. And then I'm going to cut a strip of cardstock, and I'm going to stamp a sentiment with the Nature Silhouettes stamp set that I'm going to feature in an upcoming video a lot more. I matted this on some white cardstock. This was such an easy, colorful card to create with those stencils and the inks, and I love cards like that come together so fast. For this next card, I'm going to use the Going Places stencil, that's the balloon, the hot air balloon, and I'm using the rectangle blends, which is the rectangle that I'm using in the background. The rectangle also comes with the mask. The Going Places also, I'm using the mask, it also comes with the stencil, so you get both pieces. I love that because it really allows you to do some fun things. So I have the rectangle placed down on an A2 piece of white cardstock. That's going to create a white band around the card. Then I am placing down the Going Places hot air balloon, and I'm ink blending with no diving around it. That's going to create an open space that's perfect for the stamp of Going Places, and that's how I'm going to just drop that right in. And I like how it's kind of outside the edge on the left hand side and the top a little bit. It's just kind of a fun, different way to create with this so that it looks like it's kind of actually flying out of the card. Now I'm going to do some watercoloring, and I put down a tiny little drop of the Love Struck ink refill. I love using ink refills to watercolor, and you'll see that I actually put down way more ink than I needed. I'm using a Ranger paintbrush to just fill in the lines of the hot air balloon here, and it is super, super simple. I'm not using a ton of water, so I'm not really working on watercolor cardstock right now, but you could absolutely, if you wanted to do more actual watercolor techniques on it, you could do this type of card on watercolor paper. So for the second time I learned my lesson, I just put down a teeny tiny little drop. That's really all you need. These ink pigments are so just bright and opaque. You don't need very much of them to fill in this large hot air balloon image. So these inks stamp beautifully, they ink blend beautifully, they work with stencils beautifully, and you can watercolor with them very easily. They also can be reactive to ink if you do a little sprinkle of water, and I did drop a little bit of water on the blue by accident, but kind of like the way it ended up looking anyway. For the basket for the hot air balloon, I'm going to use one color of Copic markers. I know a lot of people feel like they don't have very many Copics and they can't do blending or shading with them. You absolutely can, because they layer. So you can see I filled in the basket with one color, and then I added some shading on the sides with that same color. I'm also going to stamp from the Going Places stamp set one of the little pups that is super, super cute, and I'm going to fussy cut that little pup out so that I can have his little paws hanging over the basket. Decided to fill in that little bottom with yellow as well, because that gives it kind of that 3 elements of yellow on the card, really pops off the background there. And then just use a little tape runner to adhere our little hot air balloon pup right into that basket there. Super, super easy to fussy cut, which you know I'm not a huge fan of, but I was able to do this one really, really easily. And then I did heat emboss a sentiment from the stamp set that says "You're Going Places," and I heat embossed that right on top, which I did like, but I ended up feeling like it was getting lost, especially on the yellow. So I'm going to create another little piece of cardstock that is the same color as the sky behind the hot air balloon, just by blending a little bit of the no diving ink on some of the same cardstock that I used. So I'm just going to blend a splotch of it, and then I'm definitely going to heat set it, because I'm going to heat emboss on top, and I don't want embossing powder sticking all over that ink. So you really want to heat set it first and let it cool. Then I'm going to put some anti-static on it, brush away the excess, and then I'm going to put some embossing ink on the stamp. And you can see now my heat embossing powder does not stick everywhere, whereas if you did not use that anti-static or heat set it, it definitely would. I covered the entire hot air balloon with glossy accents, which is why I really needed to have the sentiment on top, because it really got lost under the glossy accents. But I actually like this better because it really goes with the sky and then the cardstock that I matted it on in the background. And for this card, I used the Bold Blossom stencil set, which is a 3 stencil layering stencil set for slimline cards. Now, of course, you could just do part of the design or cut it down to an A2 card, but what's great about this is that it really does fill an entire slimline card with a beautiful floral background. So once again, I find a spot in the stencil that is not open, and I put some purple tape to hold it in place. And this time I'm just using the ink that I have on the domed foam blender to color in these flowers with the no diving ink. So here I'm going to share a couple of different tips if you only have, say, 5 colors of ink, how to get different looks from them. This is one way. Just use the ink that's on the tool that you are using to blend, and you'll create a really pretty light color. Then, if you want to create some darker flowers, pick up ink every single time you put it down. So for each of these flowers, I am picking up extra ink from the ink pad and putting it directly down on the stencil. So now we have the really, really light flowers and some really, really dark flowers. And that is, you can tell they're so different. Those blues look so different. Another way is to blend on top of each other. So for this second layer, which is a bunch of leaves and some little ferns, I'm going to put the yellow down first. So I'm putting down the shooting star color all over these leaves. That's going to be our first layer of color to create a different green than Viper would create just by laying down the Viper green color. So once I have my yellow down, I am going to bring in the Viper, and I did the same thing with the light blue flowers. I'm not picking up any ink. I'm just using what's left on the tool. And you can see it creates this really pretty, almost like chartreuse color. So if you only have a few colors of inks, try these techniques to kind of stretch your supplies and decide if you want more colors added to your collection or if you can make do with what you have. So for the last stencil, I'm going to use Viper directly without the yellow underneath, and I'm going to pick some up from the ink pad as well. And you can see the difference between the two. Isn't that cool? So this is just a way to really kind of get more out of the ink colors that you already have and love. A third way, I put the flower stencil back down and I'm just flicking color from the edges of the petals slightly in towards the center. And you can see that that's a nice way to add some interest to your petals. So these are really those whimsical, pretty kind of abstract flowers, but you can add a little bit of dimension and interest. So we have the really light ones, we have the medium ones with the color flicked from the outside to the inside, and then we have the really dark ones. Then we have the mixed colors and the colors directly from the ink pad onto the foam as well. So there's lots of ways to use the inks that you have, or if you only are adding a few to your collection, to combine them. I stamped a sentiment from the Going Places stamp set on top of the ferns and the leaves there. I felt like it was getting lost, so I did end up putting a strip of white cardstock right on top of where I stamped. I had kept the stamp in my MISTI, which was a benefit because then I could just stamp it again. So maybe if you're not sure if it's going to work, keep that stamp in the MISTI until you're 100% sure is my tip there. Isn't this such a fun release? Thanks so much to Simon and Ranger for letting me share it with you all. If you love checking out new products like this and ways to stretch your supplies, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you can be notified every time I have a new video available. As always, I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you again soon. I feel like I'm missing something, but I think we got it. So it's fine. It's fine.